Hello, beautiful souls. Today's episode is so good. And before we jump in, I have some exciting news to share. If you've ever wondered where you're blocking money, this is for you. I've created a free quiz to diagnose your money wounds so you can heal them and unblock yourself to receive more money. Just go to moneywoundsquiz.com and answer 6 quick questions to get your insanely accurate and potent results. And if you're loving my vibe and want to work one-on-one to call in more feminine energy wealth, I would love to hear from you. You can shoot me a DM on social media or go to emilywilcox.com to learn more. All right, welcome back to the M Makes Money show. I am so excited. We are in for such a special treat today because we are here with our special guest, Lucas Rubix. And Lucas is a self-proclaimed addict to all things tea, fast Wi-Fi, crazy dreams, busting through limiting beliefs, talking about God, and helping coaches and experts change the world in their own special and unique way. He's the guy high achievers call when they're stuck, lost, or overwhelmed, but don't want to admit it. Lucas is a coach and mentor to well over 30,000 coaches and online experts through his free and paid programs. And he's the creator and host of the Coach's Corner podcast, which is a top 10 rated business and marketing podcast. So Lucas, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you. I have to laugh because that used to say strong coffee. And I gave up coffee cold turkey. I quit coffee sometime in end of 2020, or I don't know, like 8 months ago. And that just got changed last week because people were still like, oh, like you must love coffee. And I'm like, no, I drink tea now. So I'm like this tea, I'm learning all about teas, and I've got my tea and think time in the morning. It's epic. It's brilliant.
I love it. And I love how our bios are kind of this opportunity to redefine ourselves, right? I love coffee and that is in my bio, but I drink decaf. Like I still love the ritual of it, but I prefer to have my own energy levels without the external forces.
That's what it was. That's what it was. So that Sunday mornings, which I look forward to. I used to dislike my Sundays because I didn't get to work and I love creating. So now my Sunday morning, I have a cup of coffee and I read a book for 2 hours. And it's something I look forward to. Like, when's it going to be Sunday? Just redefining my relationship with Sunday, I guess, but also just that cup of coffee once a week on Sunday.
Yeah. I love that. Well, I am just so thrilled to have you here because even though we were in the same mastermind together, we really never connected, but somehow became Facebook friends. And you posted something that just hit at exactly how I feel and what's been on my mind with masculine and feminine energy. And your post really was something to the effect of the way that you used to build your business and how you kind of took this sledgehammer approach to everything. And it was just like, I'm going to lean in, I'm going to force it, I'm going guns a-blazing to build this thing. And now you've softened into trust and trusting the process, but then you were also talking about how sometimes that message gets misconstrued and people lean back too much, right? And then they're not taking the action. And so I commented, and then you and I had such a fun little riff that moved into Facebook messages. And I was like, we have to continue this on the podcast because I really believe that now is the time. And there's this revolution happening where so many people are waking up to a different way of building their business and building their life. So can you just talk a little bit more about that and how that unfolded for you?
Sure. Yeah. And just so I can stay in full alignment, I think I'm still on that journey, and I don't know if it ever ends, but I'm still on that journey of finding. I used to think there was going to be like a nice little point where I found the balance, but now I'm just realizing it's a sliding scale, and everything that gets thrown at me. I used to do jujitsu and judo, and there was this one exercise where you were basically a lot of opponents, like a lot of the attackers were coming at you, and every attack was different, and the way you handled every attack was different, and the level of force you would use is a sliding scale, and sometimes it was through grace and just using their body weight, which was really like Aikido centered. And sometimes it was jujitsu, which was like redirect the energy and like basically kill them, like crush the windpipe. And you've got to know, and I think I'm starting to make that connection of every situation. Like if you tread on me and you go too far, like you'll feel the wrath. But using that all of the time, like I did my entire life, and protecting my ego and just bulldozing over people you'll build something, but you won't enjoy it. And I think that's was my journey. And I think there was some generational curses, immigrants from overseas. And I was born in Italy in a refugee. It wasn't a refugee camp, but we were refugee status. And my parents came to Canada and everything was just very hard and hard work and hard labor. And I did construction. We lived in a trailer park. I worked in the trailer park when I was like 16, 15, went roofing, framing, oil rigs, which is very like toxic masculinity kind of culture. And I was 19 or 20 when I went on the rig. So that sort of started shaping my identity. And then I started a business at 25 and I basically just hit everything with a sledgehammer. I was making like $150,000 or $200,000, which I thought was like amazing, but I was exhausted working 18 hours a day. And now we've 5x'd it, like $100,000 months. And I'd say I work 10 hours a week and then I create for like 50, 60 hours a week because I just love it. But the idea of hard work and working hard, when I really started defining hard work as like this sucks versus working hard, which is I'm working through inspiration, not desperation, and creating something that I want to through passion. Like I don't want to work hard or I don't want to do hard work. I just want to like work hard because I love it. So I think that's in a nutshell, that would be that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I see this so much. And I went through this myself where like, hard work can take you to a certain point. And also like we can thank that part of ourselves and be so
100%.
Appreciative that we had that work ethic. But then we get to a point, and it typically is in the 6 figures, where we set our sights on 7 figures and go, I don't think I can, because if I have to do more of what I'm currently doing exponentially in order to make exponentially more money, like I'm just not sure how that's possible.
Yeah. And I love how you said it's a journey and we should be thankful for, those early days. And I think that's one thing I'm trying to put a message out there a little bit more, because I think people are trying to skip the steps. And I don't think you can skip the steps. I think you can prolong it way too far, like most of us have. I think we can challenge ourselves to get to the next step quicker, but I don't think you can skip it. And I truly am grateful for my work ethic. And when it comes down to it, like I can get her done. But I think that's like my last, out of all my little tools I've been building, that's like my last tool that I'll pull out. I'll pull it out if I have to, but it's not my go-to.
And I see it so much as a sequence thing, because when we can be in the feminine energy first, so the energy of receiving the inspiration. And so I think for many of us, you said talking about God, I typically refer to it as source or spirit or universe, but like, when we allow ourselves to be in this co-creative relationship and we get to receive the download or receive the inspiration first, and then flip into our masculine energy of, okay, now go do the damn thing. Now go take the action. Then it doesn't feel like work in the same way. Yeah. And I think we don't attach as much of our identity and our worth to the outcome. Because it's like, well, my goal was to listen and follow the instructions, like to trust source and trust that this was happening for me. And so we'll see what the outcome is, right? But I get to be like the instrument and go do it. And so then it feels so different than when we're like really leaning forward and blazing the trail. Like the visual I get is like taking a machete, and just like literally cutting down everything in your path. And it's like, that requires so much energy. And at the end of it, you're like sweaty and you're dirty and you just have like nothing left to give.
Yeah, that was my life. And I think I built multiple businesses, or I guess brands within businesses, but whatever way you want to call it, different offers. And I didn't know why I was doing it. I was just doing it because I had to do something. And so I built I remember so many times I faced burnout. I had a fitness business. I was a trainer here in the city. We live 40 minutes out of the city now, but downtown Vancouver. And I built this fitness business that within maybe 12 months or so, I was doing okay money, like $80, $100 an hour at the time. I thought was huge. I'd have 5, 6, 7 clients a day, $500 minimum days. And I was doing okay compared to where I came from. But it was like 6 months in, like I just got so tired that I had to take 3 months. Eventually I took 3 months off because I was just so tired, burnt out. And basically all of the money I made working extremely hard over 12 months, I just lost because shopping on Amazon, buying motorcycles, like anything I could do to try and fix my internal through the external. Yeah. And that's when I really, that 3 months that I was out, I was like, if I could build a business that was easy, that was fun, that was enjoyable, if I could like redefine the blueprint, what would that look like? And I think I still stumbled with it. Like I kind of did it, and then you'd take action, and then you'd redefine. And now I spend an ungodly amount of time, even with this new offer, every part of me just wants to take massive action on it.
Yeah.
And the things that we have to take action on, we will. But I'm just like sitting back 2 hours a day, like sitting here literally in my office. I listen to this like weird classical music and I'm like, what would it look like? And until I really feel it, I'm not going to pour all my resources into this offer until I'm really clear. And then we'll have fun building it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I love that you touch on this, because for those of us that are sort of recovering workaholics, it can be like the most difficult part is just to sit and just to be with something and not to immediately do the 50 things that you know how to do and you can actually do them really well.
Yeah.
But to just wait. So I'm curious, like, what are some of the ways that you've found to like repattern that behavior for yourself?
Yeah. And maybe to add just one thing to that, that'll segue me into the next thing is like my language too. And what words meant to me and like what things meant to me. So what was working hard, I had to redefine that. And now the hardest, or I guess the most work I do is that 2 hours in the morning. It's like my most sacred time. And I consider that work. Answering emails or, recording a video is much easier than engineering your entire future. And to me, that's work. So I used to think that as like, that can wait. I think it was an artist or someone told me that, where they spend most of their time like doing nothing. And when the burst of inspiration comes, that's when the outcome, but that outcome wouldn't happen without the 6 hours of sitting there on a blank page, using their imagination. So I think it is work. I just had to redefine it, because I used to think that time equaled money and I would swing a hammer and I would get paid. And when I started understanding that like actually value, or it's a different way of making money, but value will create money. And how can I become a person of value? How can I get the skill sets and the mindset? How can I raise my energy and frequency? So apart from anything quantum, just people like me more and people are attracted to me and I can pour more into my work. When I made that my focus and asking that question every morning of how can I fill my cup today, I think most of us and most coaches, this is just real. I've made many people quite upset at this, but I just see the work they're doing and I'm like, you're serving from an empty cup.
Yeah.
And it's kind of useless. You could do 100 times the impact if you just filled your cup, even if it took an hour in the morning.
Yeah.
Or you worked 4 days a week, not 5. And how much more powerful would you be? And so I just kind of make that my focus. I used to feel a lot of shame around that, like a lot of people, or a lot of guilt around that, because we just want to serve. But when I also started realizing that giving and receiving, like we're so good at giving, but we have a hard time receiving due to self-worth or trauma or whatever that may be, trust. When I really started leaning into that and figuring out why I didn't trust people, why I had a hard time receiving, I think a great exercise, and this was not my thing, I was part of this group where we were exploring this kind of stuff. And one of my exercises was to get a free something. And I chose, I'm going to get a free cup of coffee. And I had a few days to do this. And I used to sit at Starbucks back when I drank coffee. And I was looking for like my victim that I felt I'd be taking something away from them by asking them for a free cup of coffee. And it took me a few days. And because I like to be a man of my word, I told the group I would get it done. So on the last day, last hour, I ran into Starbucks. I looked for like the first person that I thought would give me, I tried to choose like the weakest, like who will do this, like using my logic. And I found this sounds bad, but I found this older lady and I went up to her and I was like, could you please buy me a cup of coffee? You couldn't explain why or that you were given a challenge. It was just, can you buy me a cup of coffee? And the smile on her face, like the gift I gave her at that moment, and her, like she was so happy to buy me a cup of coffee. And I felt so good receiving it. And I'm like, you know what? Like I'm worth a free cup of coffee. And how much fun we have. Like I love giving, like most of us, and just giving the gift to someone to give to you. Yeah. Open up my eyes to exploring this whole giving thing. And even nowadays, people give me a compliment. You introduced me on the podcast. I had to check myself because I wanted to make some kind of excuse in my mind. I'm like, no, I'll take it. Like, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was kind of my segue into this whole world of like yin yang and giving, receiving and duality, and just understanding that also language was just a big, how am I kind of meaning am I attaching to these words that I'm saying without being conscious of what I'm saying?
Yeah. I love that. The concept of like redefining work and what it really is in your day. Like I actually pulled a card And this was months ago, and you're making me remember it. And if you've ever pulled cards, then you open up the little book and it tells you. And there was a similar kind of parable in there where there was a painter, and he was in his backyard, and he was just laying in his hammock, and his neighbor kind of peeks over the wall and looks at him and says like, I see that you're resting. And he says, no, right now I'm working. And then this happens again where he's got his easel out and he's doing the painting, and the neighbor peeks over the wall and says, now you're working. And he says, no, now I'm resting.
That's beautiful.
And that, what you're embodying is that, right? Like the inner work is the work, and it's both easier and harder, as you say, than checking the emails and that kind of thing. And it really is about not only the semantics and the definition, but also the meaning that we attach to it.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I love that. And 100% like agree on all fronts.
Yeah.
I think it's because, or at least what I've been discovering is, like, to me, I guess the simplest way that I explain this to, I've been doing a lot of work with this with our clients, because they're so in a logical, and that's beautiful, they're so smart. Like, we have engineers who design like 3D systems that I don't even know how they do it. They're so smart, and they want to take that gift and turn it into something, but they're using logic. And when it comes to like designing your offer or creating a client journey, I'm like, all great. Like, there's a lot of logic that goes into that. But what if we could raise our frequency and get really clear on what we want, so we can attract all the people and then bring them in, and they'll seek you out. Like, when you exude that kind of energy, like, you'll get found. Like, you don't even have to be the great marketer to do it. If you want to scale, I guess marketing really comes into play. But I've seen many people with poor marketing, but you can't help but look away when they're talking. You don't even care what they're saying. You're just like, oh, I'll stop on this person.
Yeah.
And now they come into a structured and an organized system that is your business, that brings people and makes the exchange, I guess, of value and what they think is valuable, which for most people is money or a credit card or crypto. And it makes the exchange easy through systems. But even without that, it's like, so I guess I just centered my work on that. And since I've done that, we've attracted way better talent into the team. Everyone is happier. My life is way easier. Our clients are like 10x the quality, because they know what they're getting into, and we don't shy away from this conversation. I'll call them out. And I would say, like, I think even a year ago, I started feeling what joy felt like for absolutely no reason, like no outcome, not based on the external, like joy. And I'm proud to say that probably 6 out of 7 mornings, I'll feel this like ridiculous, like tears in my eyes. I walk along the train tracks, there's mountains and ocean, and I'm like crying like a weirdo. I'm just so damn happy. And to start the day like that, and it just takes half hour, and then go into the chaos and everything's burning some days, is just, you're more grounded.
Yeah.
Which brings me right back to Aikido in the early days of martial arts. This was the exact same idea. So. Yeah.
So as you recognize that your balance of giving and receiving was off, right? So whether we call it masculine to feminine energy or just giving, receiving, and so you started focusing more on the receiving, did you find that changed, the way that you ran your business, the way that you hired people or received support from them?
Yes. I'm going to try to find the word or what exactly shifted, but I know instantly when people were telling me, you're different. Like, the team was telling me we're different. Even Sarah, who is, I would say, like the right-hand woman to this entire thing, everything would fall apart without her. And I have so much gratitude for her. She's like, I guess with the trust, like, I think a big thing of trust came into my life. Maybe that's what I'm looking for here. And I just started trusting people to do their thing, taking it too far a few times where I trusted people way too quick, way too much, and they had different intentions. So you learn and you put up little systems and little things to make sure you're protected through that. But I think I used to like be angry all the time. Like, when something went wrong, I was like the fist of God. If people heard from Lucas something was wrong, and I was just adding to the chaos.
Yeah.
Even as I was letting go, and I still have to watch myself when things are going really good, which oftentimes they are now, all I want to do is jump in and like, something's got to be wrong. It can't be this good. And I just have to check myself and be like, no, I'm going to enjoy this. I'm going to go for a walk for 2 hours and everything is good as it should type thing.
Yeah.
So I think just more ease, less control, less micromanaging, understanding and really searching. We have one member on the team right now where she wasn't fit for the role she's in. But when I really started talking to her and just being like, really just pushing her into leadership, like a whole side of her came out that no one knew existed. And now she runs she started a project called the Guardian Angel, which you could kind of call client success, although I think client success is sort of lame. She's a guardian angel. So every time we have a client, now she's building a team around her. Guardian angels swoop in and they're kind of like on your shoulder, making sure that you're progressing and anything coming up for you. She can hold space like no one I've ever noticed and no one I've ever met. And she has a background in like that stuff. Like it's just ridiculous. So I think just listening and seeing people for who they are and trying to find a win-win all the time instead of just a win for me were like big shifts that started happening.
Yeah, I love that. So I'm curious to dive a little bit more into your money mindset and some of the limiting beliefs that had to change. I imagine, you touched on sort of the humble beginnings, right? And the way that you were raised and kind of the manual labor mindset. And I'm just curious, like when you started butting up against limiting beliefs around money, like what were they and how did you change them?
There's so many. I just ran a session last week with 10 people and we were all going through 25 questions I put in a PDF, and the breakthroughs I saw happening around this topic, I was like, whoa. And I could see myself, I even had many breakthroughs because I think each next level something happens, or we'd all be like billionaires or I guess like we'd all just be like kings or something. So I think for me, I remember my dad, there's a few instances, and I love my parents, amazing parents. I'm sure I don't have children, but when I do, I'm just gonna be like, I'm gonna raise them as best as I can. And then I'm gonna spend the next 10 years unlearning a bunch of stuff that I'm probably gonna teach them without meaning to. But I remember this one thing he said about taxes, because he had a business at the end and he was upset at the government. And I say this with love, like I'm not, I hope it comes out right, but I think whatever it was, he's like, there's no point in me going to the next tax bracket because the government just takes it all. And literally when I started a business, I was like 80 grand or something. And I'm like, I don't want to go beyond that because now I'll be in the 43% bracket. And I had to shift that into like, hey, like $200,000 in taxes. Like this is a celebration. How can I pay more in taxes? Hiring people, you can't find good people. I heard him say that often. And unfortunately, I believe he ran his business solo for the entire time. There's a lot of stress around it. Trailer park. I remember, I think we lived in an apartment for a little while because the government placed us in an apartment for a while. And my parents, I guess the government's really kind to immigrants. Like they give you a ton of money to make a start and they didn't want it. They took a month or two and they were like, no, we'll make our own. So my dad had 2 or 3 jobs. Most European immigrants, I think, have that story. They don't take advantage of the system. So he naturally had to work hard, but we were at a trailer park for, I think, like 10 years. I think about this one moment where, and I've apologized to my mom a million times because I knew how hard they work. As a kid, I didn't understand that. And they put me in a private, very low budget private school because they really believed in education back in Europe. That's the way it was. And this private school, people had money and my parents didn't. So my mom worked in the cafeteria for free. And then she drove the bus in the morning and in the evening. And that got me a tuition into the school. I didn't understand that as a kid. And we're living in a trailer park. And later on, we bought a small house just outside the trailer park, and everyone in this place, my mom was trying to have me have friends. So she invited me to all these birthday parties, and there were mansions, at least how I remember them as kids, mansions, probably a typical home, but to me it was a mansion. And I remember coming home being like, they had like 3 bathrooms in this house. Like I was just blown, and having this one argument where my mom was like, why don't you invite any of your friends here? And I was like, we live in a freaking trailer. Like we're bums or whatever. And she cried. And I still like feel that because I'm like, man, like kids, like you just don't get it. But anywho, so I think a mixture of that and then me really disliking wealthy people because I was bullied in school. So I made this connection with like these rich people. There was 3 or 4 guys who had quite a bit of money. And then there's me. And so obviously rich people are bad. And I think the trailer park thing of constantly, I delivered newspapers in the trailer park. I think there was like 110 units. So I'm generalizing a lot of people right now and I'm aware of that, but this trailer park was pretty low income people taking advantage of the system, welfare, and a lot of alcohol, and just not the best environment. And as a kid, I remember my mom was like, don't go into any of the trailers if anyone invites you in, like, just don't do it. And I'm sure they were nice people, but in the middle of the day, they were drunk and drinking and would try to talk to me and just kind of like weirdos. And as a kid, I mean, your first, 5 or 7 years is like where you're mostly programmed. Yeah. I know that had a massive effect. So after high school, I remember I was an actor for a little while, and every job I got cast in was blue collar. And I was so proud of that. Even on my headshots, everything, I'm like, I'm blue collar. Like, I'm a plumber. I was cast as a janitor in one of these university commercials. And it's so funny because there was a guy in a suit, the guy who went to school, and then this janitor guy, I was polishing the floor, who did not go to school. I haven't thought about this in a long time. And that's what I was typecast. And I was okay with that. I'm like, that's me. Like, I'm the janitor guy.
Yeah.
And even charging when I started a business is like, I think I charged $25 or $30 an hour. And I felt so bad for people who paid me, because I'm like I'm taking something away from them. And eventually, as I raised my prices, I started attracting guys who were driving up in Maseratis, and I was training them, and I got to know them more and how open they were about their finances and their success and their work ethic and the business they built. I started developing a lot of clientele that was entrepreneurial. They kind of started helping me. They were like, you should increase your prices. So I increased my prices. And I guess the journey started from there around that. So yes, I mean, limiting beliefs around money's evil. Also grew up Catholic. That adds a whole nother layer to the wiring I had to unwind for, around sexuality, around money, around all that stuff that is misrepresented and misread, I believe. Money's bad. People with money are bad. Money's hard to make. Don't make too much because the government takes it at some point, which is true, but you got to accept the game and play the game. So there was all that. And then I think it probably pretty typical to like a lot of people's, when I actually start working with people, it's like the same stories come up. It's just in different versions, but it's like these same 5 or 6 typical ideas around money. Just how they came into our awareness was maybe different for every person, but I haven't thought about that for a long time.
Resonate with many of those things too, like wanting to feel like you're an everyday person, right? And you're a man of the people.
And what's funny, I remember transitioning out of that. Like when I actually started making some money, I bought a BMW as a kind of like a token of like, man, like I've always wanted one. And I drove to a buddy's house, and there was 2 or 3 of them like drinking beer on the patio. And they were like, we all drove trucks, right? And I love trucks. I have a BMW right now and I love it, but I'll drive a truck happily. And I parked it, and they were all like, they meant no harm. But I remember it starting to click. I'm just like, like I started seeing myself as maybe a little bit different, or I started realizing that, hey, there's like, I just created this own reality that I lived in, and like, I can actually change this thing. And unfortunately, like probably 99% of my people, I did have to let go because it was such a drastic change. There's still 2 guys that I'm fairly close with. And it's just having the courage to like step through that and actually start redefining what you could do. But yeah, a big part of our identities, I believe, is we're proud of where we come from. There's even a sense of pride of even being poor. Like, I can't afford that.
Yeah.
Like when I hear people say that, I wish I could afford that, I just want to slap them. I'm like, you could. Like, don't be proud of that. Let's redefine this.
And so you were saying now your business is doing like $100K a month. So I feel
like we're just getting started. I almost feel like I was just around guys who, they're doing like 5, 6, 800. And I was like, almost like kind of embarrassed. I'm like, we're doing like 100. Like, what's next? But yeah, we're doing 100.
Yeah, I have that same thing. So I just joined an all women's really high end mastermind. It's a year-long commitment, and it's $10,000 a month. So it's like, for me, that was like the huge scary leap of stepping into this next identity. And then immediately feeling like you're a small fish in the pond. I
love it.
And it's funny because I had to remind myself, like, actually, this is a sign of progress, right? So like when you're feeling like 100K is small compared to your network, wow, what a sign of progress. Look at the people you're surrounding yourself with.
100%.
And so I had to do that same thing for myself, because as we were talking about before we hit record, we have this tendency to weaponize money against ourselves. And so it's like in some crowds, 100K a month is too much. And so you're like shrinking yourself down to seem relatable. And then as soon as you get in this other crowd, you're making it like, do I even deserve to be here? Right? Like weaponizing this business revenue against your own worthiness.
I like option B though. I like always feeling like the smallest fish. Like it's just like there's something inspiring about it. Like, whoa, like your paradigms are just busted. You're like, oh, and how many hours do you work? 5 hours a week?
Yeah.
Like, okay, like let me learn. So yeah.
Totally. So, I mean, clearly you're just getting started. Like I can tell from your energy and just like your passion around what you're doing. So I'm curious, what, if you had to throw a number out that you're working toward, what is
10 million. It's 10 million.
10 million.
A year. And there's a lot of constructs behind that. It's no longer just about the money. I've always wanted to build a family. I remember as a kid, I think my dad showed me this documentary or something about companies that were started where everyone was owner. And I've wanted to do that for a long time. So we just rolled that out. We're testing it right now where everyone's an owner.
Yeah.
Not on paper yet, but they all share in the profits.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, if we could do 10 million at like 40% margins and people are dipping into like even 1% of profits. If you're the janitor, your profits, like, I don't like, doesn't matter where you're at. And if you're in a leadership position, it's more. And I figured out the algorithm to how to make it work without going broke. Yeah. And that really inspired me. And I'm like, I don't have to be just the only one, or like maybe the key leaders don't have to be the only ones who are making the change. Yeah. So that inspired me to do the 10. So 10 is just, I think, a number that was calculated for like all of that. It's also a measurement of impact. As a kid, I remember I was like a little altar boy. So like I did like the incense or whatever it was. And I remember telling my parents, like, I want to be a priest. And they were so proud of their son. And I turned into the complete opposite for a long time after high school, like a tyrant. But I remember why I said it. And I had so much respect for how the priest always had their door open. And if you had a problem, you could just come into his place. And he was always helping other people. And he was so calm and wise and never made you wrong about anything and just wanted to listen and maybe guide you. And I love that. And then I realized I also want to make money. Like, I don't want to give up on my possessions. So I feel like that has manifested in like, I am, a teacher, and we're also making money, and we're also making a whole bunch of other people money. And then also just with the structure for long-term investing, it's a game that I've gotten into. So to really fuel that. So I think a lot of people just throw out a number of like $1 million, but they don't know why they're doing it. So just for anyone listening, it's not just a number. Like, I would attach what specifically it means.
Yeah, I completely agree, because when we're playing in the realm of feminine energy, so the money not coming through hard work, but coming through inspiration and impact and those energetics, we need to feel lit up by desire. Because that's what makes us so magnetic to that money coming in. And so it's like when you ask people, like, why do you want that money? And it's sort of like, well, this is how much is needed to pay the bills and that kind of stuff. It's like you can feel.
Yeah. And it's like that's what M makes. Like, I want to do what M does. And it's like, it's gotta, like, do you really want to make what, Emily or Lucas or him or her does? Or is like, what does it mean to you? For sure. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Comparison game.
So it's like when we can do those things that make us feel lit up, that also is what brings in the money too, and just energetically. So I'm curious, as you think about this version of you that has a $10 million business and has it kind of co-op profit sharing style and all this kind of stuff, have you been able to identify, is there any friction there for you from like money mindset perspective that you feel like it would prevent you from stepping into that version of yourself?
Yeah. We're really talking about, who do I got to become and who do I have to be?
Yeah.
There are a few. There is obviously some on the logical side, a few things around skill set. So I'm in a mastermind for that specifically, more about completely letting go of, actually, this is something I didn't market, but it's something that's happening, is completely letting the emotions of money and looking at balance sheet and cash flow statements and understanding company financials and evaluating companies. Yeah. So I'm in a mastermind for that. That is very new to me, but I've been having a lot of fun with it. And it almost like the byproduct of that, and it's something I should actually tell him because he should market this, is you almost become even less attached to money because you start seeing it as a tool and as a resource and as like it's moving and it's flowing and it's coming in and out. And you're like, oh, you just look at a piece of paper and you're like, that's my company and I understand what's happening within it. And you can even make decisions based on understanding the numbers. So there's skill set that I'm working on, leaning even deeper into trust. And with that, seeing something that's been coming up for me lately with the profit sharing is this one thought: if I had to work 4 or 5 years to hard work, make what I'm paying out as just a bonus to this person. And some things come up sometimes. I'm like, do they actually deserve it? Did they earn it? And I'm aware of it and I'll sit with it. And, I'll work on turning that around and understand how much value they actually bring and like how just the speed at which we're growing is literally not even dependent on me anymore and what that's really worth to me.
Yeah.
Things around paying myself lately. And that's something I worked through last year. I had all the money sitting in the company and I was just so like terrified of paying myself. I think things around taxes came up. I think all these things came up. And then I had a goal of like, I'm going to put $100,000 in my personal bank account and I'm going to spend 3 months to get there. And 3 months later, I had $100,000. And I just started getting those numbers of like, personally, what would I have to have in a savings account? Which investors will tell you is wrong. But I think there's some equity in what's your little cushion number.
Yeah.
That you sleep well at night. And it's not making you money. And it might even be losing value. But to me, that's important. So I wanted $100,000 just sitting in an account that every time I look at my bank account, it's there.
Yep.
So that came up. I had to work through it instead of keeping it all in the company. So those were some of the things. But other than that, I see myself as someone who makes 10 million. It's not even foreign to me. And I've already felt it so often that when it happens, it won't be a surprise.
I love that so much. And I love what you're speaking to, which is like the energetics behind these decisions, right? Because so often our neural pathways, whenever it has to do with money, it's like this old story around lack. It just fires. It's there. It's the automatic programming. And so even once that shouldn't be our paradigm anymore, it still happens, right? So it's like you could be paying someone this huge bonus and have that feel like lack. You could have $100,000 sitting in your bank account and your mind can still translate that to lack because, inflation. So that money is losing 3% a month. So pretty soon you look at $100K in your bank account and it feels like loss, like lack. And so I love your level of intentionality of really noticing these thoughts as they, scamper through your mind and saying, wait, hang on a second. And just allowing yourself to rewrite that, because that is so much of like the inner work, is allowing ourselves to feel joy and feel abundance in all of these places. And knowing that sometimes going against conventional wisdom is the most appropriate thing for us to do, right? Yeah. Because it actually makes us feel good. And the more that we can just feel joy and the more that we can feel abundant, the more comes to us. Like it can be so simple when we allow it. Yeah. But we second guess experts versus us being the expert in our own life, right?
That's it right there, I think, is listening and like understanding, because I want all the facts before I make a decision. And so I'll grab all the facts. I bought recently I bought gold, like it's sitting on my desk, and I bought gold, and I would say that it was not a great investment, but I wanted physical gold on my table, and any investor would be like, don't buy gold right now. Or maybe they would, or they have their own thing. To me, I'm like, I'm buying gold because it reminds me of like value and it makes me feel wealthy, and I want to touch it and feel like actual something that's been used, like kings built their chests from gold, and I just want that in front of me. And so I bought it. Or I have $1,000 sitting in cash on my table. It's just this great little reminder. I use bookmarks, like $100 bills for bookmarks.
Yeah.
Just a reminder. And yes, it might get lost. It's someone might take it. I might lose it. I get that. But I think sometimes like you don't have to always rely on logic. And that's, again, being fairly intelligent, like most of us listening here are starting businesses. That's something that I had to come to terms with. And when you know what you want, if I wanted to build wealth way faster and that was my only goal, I wouldn't have any cash. I'd have no gold, and I'd probably have debt, and I'd be turning that debt into more money. But just for where I'm at right now, it's not what I want. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I love that, having that tactile experience of money and value, right? Like we don't get that as much now in modern society, where everything is, just ones and zeros on a computer screen. But it is fun to have those tactile experiences. And
mass produced, I think. Like everything is so mass produced. And I think what I've been realizing lately is, so I keep things around me all the time. I have like a chess piece, and this is a mass produced chess piece. So I've just bought a new chess piece that is like custom made, and it's way too, it's expensive, but there's an energy to it.
Yeah.
Or like when you drive something, or you own a piece of clothing or whatever that you've paid the extra dollars for, even if it's a name brand, and I could care less about the name brand, but there's this energy to it that I don't think most people understand, that there's value within that. Yeah. And if you can surround yourself with these things that actually just give you energy, you're setting yourself up to win, and just make it easier. So I stopped buying mass produced stuff, and I'm like, I want high quality. I'll save extra if I have to, or it can be illogical, but there's an energy that pays dividends that I think sometimes an investment into an index fund just, it pays more in dividends, I think, sometimes in doing the illogical things. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's like based on whose logic, right? Because if it feels good in your body, then it is the right thing for you to do. And that is the fastest path. And what you were talking about, like if you just wanted to build wealth the fastest, that you'd have debt and you'd be turning money into more money. And I think that really comes back to kind of the summary of what we've been talking about today, which is like, you get to have a life you enjoy and a business that you enjoy, and have the wealth that you desire. And you get to have them both at the same time if you choose it.
It's a beautiful reminder, is that, and that's so oftentimes forgotten.
Yeah.
And not but or, but like and.
Yeah, exactly.
And.
So, well, I feel like we could talk all day. This has been so much fun.
Yeah. I think that there's one last thing for everyone, and you touched on this in the start, but it's like not making where you're at wrong. And I'm just so tired of seeing that. And I get it from a marketing standpoint, you build desire, and I get it. Like we play the game as well, but just watch it. Is like you're perfect the way you are, and you can have more. Or like you're literally, even if you're broke and you have bills by like piling up on your desk, you're perfect. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. Yeah. And I think turning it into a game and understanding it is kind of a game will just maybe make it easier. But you're perfect where you are, but keep listening to this podcast or seek out, Emily's help and keep leaning into it. And you can get to the next level and the next level and the next level, and you can help other people get to the next level.
Perfectly stated. And Lucas, I just love your message. I love your energy, and I love the way that you show up online. I think that you're a very inspirational person to follow. So I would love for you to just share the best way for all of our listeners to follow you.
That's a really good question lately. I've been really questioning Facebook, although we use Facebook, but it's just Lucas Rubix on all platforms. The website's the most up to date because it has links to where I hang out most. Yeah. But I think YouTube's going to become our main platform and our podcast, like these long form content that if someone wants to download real value, they can tap in. So all those links are at lucasrubix.com. But yeah, I'd say Facebook is where I hang out the most right now.
Awesome. yeah, I'm going to start tuning into your podcast as well. I'm really excited about that.
Well, we'll do a little exchanges. We'll make sure we get you on our show. I'm backlogged like so much because we have a new podcast person that's getting trained up, but we'll definitely get you on the show.
Yeah. Well, time is an illusion anyway. So everything's always happening in perfect timing if we allow it.
That's true.
Well, thank you so much. It's been just a joy to have this conversation with you. And I look forward to continuing to connect and deepen our friendship and relationship online.
I feel the same. Thanks, Emily.
All right. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. Changing the way we think, feel, and talk about money will change the world. I truly believe that. It starts with you tuning in, and it spreads when you share this show on Instagram and Facebook and tag me at mmakesmoney. And you know what moves the needle the most? Taking just a minute to leave a 5-star review on iTunes. This show isn't free to produce, so let's multiply those dollars invested to help this show reach a bigger audience each week. Thank you so much for your help. I really appreciate it. And lastly, if you want more connection, more M Makes Money style riffs, and a safe place on the internet to talk about money, jump into my free Facebook group, The Money Club. It's linked in the show notes. Until next time, I'm wishing you health, happiness, and boatloads of money.